Welcome to Fireside Gaming. I'm Billum, and I think it's about time we talk about remakes. But not just any remakes. We've got to discuss remakes of Square Enix games on the Super Nintendo. Square has been doing a pretty solid job lately with reviving games from its SNES library. We recently got a 3D remake of ActRaiser, which admittedly looks a bit too much like a mobile game for my taste, but it's a step in the right direction. Then a recent Nintendo Direct revealed that the first Front Mission game is getting remade in 3D as Front Mission First. That's great news for fans of the series and lovers of mecha. No joke, this alone blew me away during that Direct since I played this game via the fan translation for Super Nintendo way back in the day. But Square didn't just stop there. It did something even better. Something that fans have been requesting since the release of Octopath Traveler in 2018. They revealed an HD-2D remake of a classic SNES game, Live a Live. Yet again, this is another game I'm already familiar with thanks to a fan translation. But dang if I'm not excited to play it again with this HD-2D coat of paint. And it looks like Square Enix might be moving forward with plans for more HD-2D remakes of SNES games. So that got me thinking, what are some other games from the Super Nintendo that I personally want to see remade in the HD-2D style? Let's get right into that with my picks for the top 10 SNES games that Square Enix needs to remake in HD-2D. First up is Evo Search for Eden. Do you remember those games you used to play on school computers where you were a fish that ate other fish to get stronger and score points? Well, that's kind of what Evo is. Except you use points to evolve new features, which will eventually see you leaving the ocean in a journey that spans millennia as you seek out Gaia herself. I'll be completely honest, as unique of a game as Evo is, it's not the best game out there. Despite that, I'd still like to see a remake of it. If only to make it legally playable without having to spend nearly $300 on a loose cartridge. Yeah, retro game prices can really suck, and this is a prime example of why game publishers need to do better when it comes to offering up their classic libraries. Up next is the Seventh Saga, a game you've likely never heard of, but dang is it interesting. It's a turn-based RPG that has players start out by choosing a character to play as from a set of 7. After doing this, you can freely explore around the world and get into battles with this wonky display mode possible via the SNES's Mode 7 chip. But what's really neat is that while you're out adventuring, the other 6 characters you didn't choose to play as are doing the same. This creates a competition between the player and the 6 NPCs to collect 7 magical runes. There are also opportunities to team up with other NPCs as a way to make certain tasks easier. Unfortunately, the Seventh Saga got some difficulty changes when it was brought to the US. And not the normal case of games being made easier, such as what happened with Final Fantasy IV. No, this time the game was made much more difficult. I've tried playing through it a few different times and just never got too far into it. So I'd love to see it remade with its original difficulty in place. Now let's talk about Brainward. It's a top-down action RPG in the same vein as The Legend of Zelda or even Enix's own Soul Blazer. The game's all about solving puzzles, navigating dungeons, and killing beasts. Truth be told, I've never played Brainward before this video. My interest in it comes from watching a friend play through a good portion of the game when we were living together in college. While I enjoyed watching him play it, I never took the dive to try it out myself. An HD-2D remake would be a perfect opportunity for me to try out this game. That's not to say I have any problem with playing the current version. This is a retro game channel after all. But I always love seeing people get introduced to old games via re-releases, remasters, and remakes, so long as they're done with care. Number 7 on this list is a game I've already beat but really don't care for. Ogre Battle March of the Black Queen. It's a turn-based RPG that also includes real-time strategy elements. The mix of combat makes for an interesting experience, but it's a bit of a slog to play through anymore. For example, the move speed on the map is amazingly slow, and players don't have full control of their parties when combat takes place. These two factors really make it hard to recommend the game, especially considering some games in the series make the switch to tactical turn-based RPG. Think Final Fantasy Tactics, which is also made by Ogre Battle creator Yasumi Matsuno. And now we get to a tough decision. Should this game keep its original gameplay and only include quality of life changes? Or would it be better to revamp it completely into a Tactics Ogre game instead? My vote is for the latter, but I also understand that could alienate fans of the original. Let me know if you've got a strong opinion on this one way or another in the comments section. Yet again, we've hit a game that I have no real personal experience with, but have always had an interest in, Robotrec. Just like with Brainward, this is a game that I watched a roommate play in college. The same roommate, actually. The game's mostly lighthearted, with players creating their own robots out of scraps and sending them into battle. It has some early creature collection aspects in that regard, but it takes place in a sci-fi setting. Considering Square has been so focused on fantasy lately, it wouldn't hurt to have a recent sci-fi release under their belt, just to mix it up. And I think Robotrec would work well for that. HD-2D remaster or not, I'm definitely going to play through this game eventually. Kicking off the second half of our list is Treasure of the Rudra. When I saw Live A Live getting an HD-2D treatment, my mind immediately went to this game as the next possible candidate for Square to remake. I mean, it's already a beautiful game, and I think HD-2D could make it even more so. Treasure of the Rudra sees players tackle 3 scenarios, with each one of them having their own main character. After completing all of these scenarios, there's still a bit more for players to do with these characters coming together. Oh yeah, the game also takes place during the last 15 days before humanity is wiped from the Earth. I'm skimming on the details here as there's a bit more to it than that, but I don't want to give away too much about the plot. This is easily the game I think has the most potential for an HD-2D remake, and I'm really holding out hope that I'm right. If I'm wrong, at least there's the fan translation to fall back on. Alright, so go ahead and take Fireworks 4, 3, and 2 all at the same time, because we're talking about a trio of games that are sorely in need of a re-release, and an HD-2D remake would be the perfect fit. It's the Quintet trilogy, which is made up of Soul Blazer, Illusion of Gaia, and Terranigma. Those first 2 games got a release in the US, but Terranigma didn't. Granted, it does have a splotchy English translation for its PAL release, but it still didn't come out in America. Considering that the Quintet trilogy can be expanded to also include ActRaiser, it only makes sense for these games to get a new release too. I've actually been playing through these games already for review. So far I've made it through Soul Blazer and Illusion of Gaia. I'll link those videos below for a better breakdown of those games. But know that all 3 of these games are action RPGs with incredibly interesting stories and loose connections between them. They're each special in their own right, and I'd love to see an HD-2D remake that would introduce the series to modern gamers. We're finally at the number 1 spot of the list, and sitting on top is Bahamut Lagoon. This is another case of a game that I've already played thanks to a fan translation, but never got around to beating. I'd love to amend that mistake with an HD-2D remake of the game. Bahamut Lagoon is a tactical turn-based RPG that has players forming squads alongside dragons. These dragons are a bit uncontrollable, so players can only issue vague commands to them. However, they can control how the dragons evolve. This lets players change the attributes of dragons and create whole new ones with unique designs. I'm guilty of talking Bahamut Lagoon up and recommending it to people despite never beating it myself. And that's mostly due to just how much I love the concept. The player leads a dragon squad as its captain and fends off an attack from an evil empire. That's cool enough on its own. But add in the lagoons of the game's title being floating continents that players travel around on, and it's just made for me. Dang, writing about it really makes me want to go back and play it again. I might not be patient enough for an HD-2D remake at this point. And before we close this out, I do have a few honorable mentions that I want to shine some light on real quick. The first of these is Front Mission Gun Hazard. Instead of a turn-based RPG, this is a run-and-gun shooter with RPG elements blended in. I originally thought of this game due to the recent Front Mission remakes. However, I also understand why Square wouldn't want to remake it right now. See, Gun Hazard takes place in an alternate universe to the mainline Front Mission series. Considering Square is only just now bringing Front Mission back, they might not want to confuse new players with a game that's not canon to first or second mission. The second honorable mention is Treasure Hunter G. I'd literally never heard of this game before doing research for this list, but what I found is an interesting looking tactical RPG, and I'm always game for more of those. The one reason I'm unsure about this getting an HD-2D remake is the graphics. The game uses pre-rendered 3D models for character sprites, similar to Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars, and I'm not really sure how well that would translate to HD-2D. And the final honorable mention is Wonder Project J, an interesting life simulation game that I've played around with a bit in the past. It's also an incredibly beautiful game that I'd love to see in the HD-2D style, and I think its unique teaching gameplay could really take off with indie gamers. And that's all of them. My top 10 picks for SNES games that Square Enix needs to give the HD-2D treatment, as well as a few extras. Let me know if you've got any picks of your own in the comments below. Thanks for checking out this video, and take it easy!